welcome to our 21st installment of the Lunch with Eaters virtual event series. It's a monthly lunch and learn program built specifically for you, the UCI alumni and friends community. And we're happy to continue keeping this going. This is one of many events that we started virtually at the beginning of the pandemic. Of course, virtual programs have a lot of value, and we've seen such popularity in these that we're going to continue with virtual programs. This one in particular has been great because we get to examine lots of interesting career paths, expertise of many alumni from so many different fields, and it's been very well received. So thank you for joining us today for this specific one. Now, we have an archive of all of those and many dozens more of past events that have been recorded on our YouTube page, UCI Alumni. We also have a website full of resources for you, not just videos of events, but downloadable content, links to other resources you may not know about where you can get more engaged and make a difference. Primarily, I'd say our alumni chapters, of which we have 38, all looking for new volunteers to get involved. The Anteater Network mentorship platform, if you want to connect with students and make a difference in their lives, as well as the UCI Alumni Association membership program, which will give you benefits and help you or give you a way to give back to UCI. So for this event, everyone is going to stay muted. We have that just in order to eliminate all the background noise and interference and make the program nice and smooth. But we don't want you to be muted figuratively. So use the chat with each other, use the Q&A function. We will have a dedicated section for Q&A for our featured speaker today for about the last 15 minutes of the event, but submit questions in Q&A throughout. If you have anything that comes to mind, put it in there, and we'll get to as many of those questions as we can at the end of the program. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our featured speaker, who is a very engaging alum, and we can't wait to start this program. So here we go. I'm going to introduce Temo Gomez. Temo graduated from UCI in 2006 and earned a BA in psychology and social behavior in the School of Social Ecology. He and I were students at the same time. I'm sure some of you were as well. He soon began his career at the UCI Police Department, committing his life to public safety. His two sons, Logan and Luke, are tuning in and supporting him today. Shout out to you, Logan and Luke, for supporting your dad. We're thrilled to have you. And everyone join me in the audience. Please give Officer Gomez a great big virtual Anteater welcome. Welcome to the virtual stage.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks. Pleasure to be here.
So you're dialing in from UCIPD office, I believe, right?
Yes, this is our briefing room, and jokingly, it's called one of the smallest briefing rooms in Orange County, but it works for us.
Right on. Well, Temo, thank you so much for joining us today. We do have a specific focus on public safety tips and tricks, but we want to learn more about you and your tie to UCI. That's the great thing that ties us all together, everyone in the audience. So perhaps you could start sharing your favorite one or two UCI memories.
Well, the first two that come to mind was my very first. When I first stepped onto UCI campus in the dorm, was the first year that they opened up Aldea down in Mesa Court. So that was really fun. I can still remember having my parents drop me off, getting all of my stuff, walking up to the dorm, and just being really nervous, getting to meet all my dorm mates, who ended up just being some of the best people I've ever met in my entire life, some of which I'm still friends with today. So that was a lot of fun. And then the complete 180 opposite, other best memory is graduating and walking down that aisle, Red Event Center, and just being done with getting my bachelor's.
Excuse me, it's got to happen once a day. I was on mute. Apologies. The Mesa Court connection runs deep. Shout out in the chat if you were like Temo and I living in Mesa Court and getting that entree to the UCI experience. Thanks for sharing. Now, what drew you to the police force after graduation in UCI PD?
Actually, I have my wife to thank for that. After graduation, I took about a year while I was working with my family, and then in 2007, I started working in Aldrich Hall for the Office of Academic Personnel. And so I did that for about 8 or 9 years. And then my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, was working for the police department, who's also a UCI alumni. Actually, she graduated with a degree in anthropology. So she was working at for the UCI police department on the admin side, and she told me like, "Hey, you should apply to become a police officer. We have an opening up. You'd be great at it." And at first I was like, "Ah, no, I'm not really interested." And she's like, "No, like you should look." And I was like, "Okay." And so I went and I met with two of the sergeants at the time, and both of them said, "Yeah, no, you'd be a really good fit. You already know the locations, you know a lot of the people from being a student and from working in academic personnel. Like it'd be good." So I figured, okay. Aside from that, I had no interest in law enforcement ever in my life, but I went through the process, got hired, went to the academy, and it's been the best decision I've ever made. Been doing it for about 6 to 7 years now, and there hasn't been a day that I haven't been looking forward to coming into work.
That is a very strong endorsement, and I would bet we have some folks in the audience, some alumni who may be on the same career path or consider your career path. I do understand there are a number of UCI alumni like you on the UCI PD force. Is that right?
Right. So not only are there other officers that graduated from UCI, but we also have other officers that graduated from other UCs that currently work here as well. And for anyone that is interested in law enforcement and you think that you might be too old, I didn't start the academy until I was about 30, or I turned 30 in the academy. So it's never too late. As long as you can go through the physical requirements, you can pass the academy, you're good to go.
Awesome. So that's good to know, but tell us about the qualifications for your type of role.
So you definitely want to have a protector's type of mentality. I always tell people, if you're the type of person that while you're driving and you slam on the brakes, your instinct is to put your hand on the passenger, even though you know it's really not going to do anything, but your instinct is to try to protect them. If that's the type of person you are, then law enforcement for you. We definitely wear a lot of different hats in this profession, but by and large, our most prominent one is to be a guardian, to be a protector. So if you have that instilled in you, then this is definitely a career that would work. There's been a lot of times that I met people that were starting the process or went into the academy or even graduated the academy, and 2 or 3 weeks into it, they're like, "Oh yeah, no, this isn't what I thought." And that's okay, because some people don't really understand. But again, if you start off with that mindset of you want to help and protect people, then this is definitely the right job for you.
Well, that's a super relatable way to put it. You know, we talk about various career paths with other alumni and with students who are looking for that. And when you hear about qualifications for a job, it's always something like certificates or certain lines of education, work experience, X number of years. So really cool. I love the way you put that. Now, Tema, what are some of the common instances that you've used public safety procedures?
So the biggest one that they instill in us while we're in the academy is a 6-long process. Just to give people a general idea of the training that we get in California. All throughout the state of California, all the police officers are trained the same. It's called Police Officer Standards and Trainings, and that's standardized throughout the whole entire state. So it's a 6-month academy, and we're there for 8 hours a day, 5 days. So it's a full-time job. And in those 6 months, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, they train you on knowing your surroundings and just being observant as to what's going on around you. And so if there's any takeaway that I would give to people is to go into anywhere that you go into with that type of mindset. So when you go to a restaurant, just know where the exits are, know where the emergency exits. Try to position yourself somewhere where you can keep observations on the front door, because you never know anything these days. Like anything might happen. So you always want to keep it. We always say, keep your head on a swivel, and just I always just kind of have an idea of where you are and what's going on. So if you're walking, somewhere late at night, if you're in an area you don't really know, if you're in some parking structure, or that something just doesn't feel right, just always try to keep your head on a swivel and just understand, okay, if something were to happen right now, where could I go? Who could I call? Where could I run to? Type of thing.
Yeah, wow. So I'm sure we're going to get into details on a lot of that momentarily. So let's take a quick break to get some audience feedback. We would love to know what drew you to this webinar. What interests you in this topic? Why are you joining us today? We're going to pop up a poll on your screen. So I think that's going to pop up and let us know. Options are: you want to get into this field, you're generally interested in this topic, you are a police officer, other. And yeah, I mean, you're right. Public safety, it's kind of a crazy world. You know, there's all kinds of considerations, especially post-pandemic. I shouldn't say post-pandemic, current pandemic situations. And public safety can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. So it looks like most people in the audience are generally interested in this topic. We don't have any other police officers, but that's good. So there's interest here, and we're going to learn from the expert. So let's move on. Officer Gomex, I have a number of questions for you. So everyone pay attention, because there are a lot of nuances to this. Throw questions in the Q&A. Maybe we'll get to them before Q&A, but if not, then we will come to them. And let's get started. So first question: how easy is it to learn self-defense moves to protect oneself?
Great question. So what I would recommend to people is learn some type of martial art or learn some type of defensive tactics, whether that be Taekwondo, MMA, Jiu-Jitsu, Kung Fu, just whatever, boxing, whatever it is that interests you, do that, because knowing something is always going to be better than knowing nothing. And if there's something that you find yourself that you're interested in, just keep doing that and just perfect the craft and just learn that type of fighting style. One of the sayings is, I believe it was Bruce Lee mentioned that he's not really too scared of someone who does 10,000 martial arts once. He's more concerned about the person that studies one type of martial art or one type of move a million times. So the more you learn something, the more you can practice something, the better off you're going to be. Because once we get into that fight or flight mentality, or something starts happening, they say that we always go revert back to our lowest level of training. So if you practice the same thing over and over and over, it'll end up becoming muscle memory, and you won't really have to think too much about it. You'll just already know instinctively what to do because you practice and you train it a lot. If you're trying to do some really intricate and hard techniques, you haven't really tried it, once push comes to shove, it's going to be really difficult to try to remember, okay, do I put my hand here? Do I put my leg here? There's an instance in Napoleon Dynamite where the guy grabbed his arm, he's like, no, grab my arm, no, with the other arm, no, with your other arm. It's like, well, yeah, if any move is like that intricate and that detailed, you're probably not going to use it unless it's something that you practice over and over.
Let's talk about that self-defense a little more. We'll talk about situations after this, but you know, a lot of people are going to be intimidated by that. You obviously are can handle yourself and are trained in these kind of conflicts. Most people in the audience maybe never have had such a situation and don't want to get into any kind of physical conflict. And then they have kids. You know, we already have a question. Shout out to my friend Leanne Kaufman in the audience. Children obviously are not going to be able to do that. So are there any other self-defense related things you would suggest other than physical training?
Honestly, I think so they say that our best weapon, or the best thing in our arsenal, is our mouth. And they say that this is going to get you in a lot of fights or out of a lot of fights, depending on what type of verbal judo you're able to have. So definitely communication skills are definitely key. Learning empathy helps out a lot, especially when we're dealing with someone who's having a mental health crisis, or someone who's dealing with a very traumatic event, or something that's very emotional. Being for me in my profession, being able to connect with people is very helpful. So a lot of times, if you're getting into an altercation, a lot of times you can kind of squash it if you're just able to talk and kind of relate to the person. But when all that goes outside the window, then it's best to have some type of self-defense. So any type of physical self-defense moves or training that you have would be ideal. The great thing with nowadays, there's so many varieties of different places that you can go to train, and you can do it of all ages. They have some places where you can go and you can take your kids and you can learn right there, right along with your kids. And I know Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is really great at that. A lot of them are very, very family friendly and family oriented. And so they'll go, and I know for me, when I was growing up, what was really difficult was going out there and initially doing it, because I was always scared that, oh, well, I'm gonna, I don't know as much as anyone else. I'm gonna be made fun of, or I'm gonna look stupid doing it. Once you're actually there, nobody cares. It really does end up becoming more of a learning environment. And as long as you don't think that you're the biggest guy on campus and that you're big and you know more than another person, because there's always going to be somebody that trains more than you. So if you're able to leave your own ego at the door, you'll find that a lot of these places are really nice and they're really there to try to help. And yeah, you can do it from all ages.
Yeah. And the first thing you led with is applicable to everyone, kids, adults as well, is, use your mouth. That's a enormous self-defense mechanism, right? Mm-hmm. So let's back it up a little bit and let's talk about situations. Obviously when you have to get into self-defense, things are very dangerous, right? But mm-hmm. Before that, maybe talk about preventative. And you mentioned earlier situational awareness, knowing where you are, what your environment is, if you're indoors or outdoors, nighttime, daytime. Can you just give your thoughts on that? Maybe we can go in a direction after you kind of talk about what people should be looking out for if they're in any kind of a situation where they may be vulnerable.
I think with what's been happening recently with a lot of incidents on the freeway, I think people are starting to understand that you don't really know to what extent someone else is willing to take an argument or an altercation. So we always train for the worst case scenario. So we always go into a situation, because they tell us that when we're going through training, is any call for service that we go on, an officer has died responding to that type of call. So in the back of our heads, we always have it in like, okay, if things hit the fan, what are my outs? What can I do? What are my options? What am I dealing with type thing? And I think that type of thinking for the general public is going to be helpful, because nowadays, again, like you never know how far. It's not like when we were growing up, right? Like you get in an issue with somebody, you meet them after school, you punch each other for a little bit, and then it'd be done. Like nowadays, people bring weapons, and it's for the smallest things. You'll see, people escalating. So just kind of understanding that, like, hey, is this something that I'm willing to go? To what extent am I willing to go and take this confrontation? And and that's internal, and that's completely okay. If you know within yourself, hey, I'm not willing to take someone's life, to stab someone, to get in physical altercation with someone, then once you see someone starting to get aggressive and start going that way, you remove yourself from the situation, get somebody else involved that can either make a police officer or some type of security that can go and can handle that situation, or just or leave or de-escalate and be like, hey, you know what, you're right, it's not worth it, type thing.
So de-escalating, great word. I think that would probably be on the minds of a lot of people who don't want to even think about going further down the road. Mm-hmm. Do you have tips and tricks on de-escalating? Like, say there's a couple examples. There's a road rage incident, and maybe there's people get out of the car, and you have fight or flight. You're panicked. How do you de-escalate something like that? Or you're walking, you bump shoulders, someone's upset, and you don't want any conflict. The best thing is to avoid conflict, right? So how do we do that?
I would recommend, so it always helps to be able to kind of help put yourself in someone else's shoes. If there's a road rage incident, or somebody's upset, or someone cuts you off, and just try to internalize it. Like, okay, well, maybe this person's late for work. Maybe there's a reason why they're driving fast. The reason why they might be driving erratically. Or in that situation, we've had that happen here, where some lady one driver cut off another driver, and then the driver that got cut off or felt that they were wronged ended up following the first person. And so that first person called us and they're like, "Hey, I'm getting followed by this person. What should I do?" And so we had that the person that called just come to our police department, and then sure enough, the vehicle followed, and then we talked to them in that situation. But I think with a lot of it is, yeah, just understand that a lot of times people aren't doing things to be malicious. Sometimes there are people that are that way. But if someone bumps into you, like, don't always feel that someone's trying to be aggressive or maybe trying to be angry or upset. So just letting a lot of stuff just kind of like water off your back type thing. Like, hey, it's not a big deal. I'm not going to escalate this. But again, if someone is doing it repeatedly and constantly, then yeah, you definitely want to stand up for yourself. Or you can always contact, if you're out somewhere, you can contact the police, you can contact security and say, like, hey, this is what's going on. And then that puts you out of the situation. And now you have other people who are a little bit more trained to deal with it. But as far as if it's just a one-on-one type thing, you see one person getting aggressive, a lot of times it's like, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't mean, whatever it is that person thinks that you did. Hey, I didn't mean to shove you. It was an accident. My apologies. And a lot of times that ends up working.
Yeah, that's good. More elaborating on that, are there any even more specific things you can do if you're in a face-to-face verbal altercation, and like you just said, I apologize, you try to de-escalate? Are there any things you can do more practically, even like with your hands, with your body language, eye contact, anything you can do that often works in de-escalating some kind of a situation like that?
Great question. So de-escalation only ever works if both parties are willing to get it de-escalated. So if you want to be aggressive and I'm trying to de-escalate, but you just want to keep on being aggressive, and you're telling me that with your body language, with your with your how you're standing, how you're yelling, with the things that you're saying, then there's really no amount of de-escalating that I can do on my behalf that'll work. If I'm really telling you, like, hey, I'm sorry, like, I apologize, like, what else would you like me to do? Like, what's gonna make the situation better? And you just, that other person just persisting, then there's no amount of stuff that I can do. But a good thing is to kind of learn how to read body language. So if someone's sitting there and they're clenching their fist, if they're getting in a fighting stance, if you see that they're kind of getting, like, everyone who's been in a fight, either themselves knows like the feelings that they get, right? Like, your hands start to tense up, you start gritting your teeth, you kind of start like getting ready to get yourself in that boxer stance. If you see someone else doing that stuff, just key in on it and be like, okay, there's nothing that I can say that's gonna get this person to calm down. And then you have a few different options, right? Either you go and you get ready for a physical altercation, or you just remove yourself from the situation and call someone else to come and handle it.
Okay, great. Now, so you've talked about a couple situations, for example, being cut off, or even if you know, initiate some kind of a road rage incident. It's great if you can drive to a police station or maybe a fire station or something where you might get some assistance, but most people may not think of that. Anyway, what other situations do these tips benefit people the most? Like, what other problems could people get into, or what are the most common areas where you need to be thinking about public safety more so than in the norm?
Again, it's one of those questions that I guess from our standpoint gets kind of jaded just because we're constantly thinking about it. So I would say any type of situation where you're out in public, it's something that you should kind of just keep in mind because we've seen shooting events happen at farmers markets and movie theaters and at concerts. So it's one of those things that it's an unfortunate reality of the world that we're living in. But just every time you go out, just understanding like, okay, again, what are my outs? What are my options? If something were to happen right now, if something were to happen on the way there, what can we do? Me and my wife, we have a plan or words that if I say something that she knows, okay, like, we gotta go. So just kind of having that emergency plan with you and your loved ones in play, that in case anything does happen, you're kind of already prepared. You kind of have a general idea as to who's going to do what.
Yeah. Well, you brought it up. You mentioned shootings, and that is on everyone's mind. The world has scared people. That can happen anywhere, anytime. Schools, supermarkets. It's just a natural fear I think probably everyone in this call has. So if something breaks out, if you're in a situation and it's really dangerous, there are weapons involved, you hear a gunshot or whatever, we need tips and tricks on that. So can you walk us through what we should do just as citizens?
So there's a great video that got brought out by the FBI. You can Google it, just type in FBI run, hide, fight. And that's essentially what we're training people to do. Is your first goal should be to run. If you hear a situation happening, you hear shots fired, is to just run in the opposite direction. If you're in a situation where where running isn't an option, then hide. Put your cell phones on silent or turn them off if you can. Don't just put them on vibrate. Barricade the doors if possible. And then if there's no other alternative, then be prepared to grab anything that you can that could be used as a weapon, and position yourself away from the door, but strategically where if that person, if let's say it's an active shooter, if an active shooter does come in, that you can at least, if it's you and a group of people, you can bombard them. But it's always run if you can. That's always the first course of action. Hide if running is not an option, and then fight if you need to.
Yeah. So I just shared that video in the chat. But if you're in a situation, you're indoors, you're at your office, your kids are out of school, something you mentioned earlier comes into play is knowing your environment, right? Especially when you're thinking about running. Talk about that a little bit. Like, what should you be looking for?
So again, the more information that we have going into a situation, the better off that we are. So if we go to work the same place every day, knowing where the emergency exits are, knowing how many entrances and exits there are. So if the person's coming in and there's only one way to go in, then you know that your options of running are probably not going to be there. And then putting yourself in a situation where you can barricade the door, turn the lights off, put your phone on silent, and make it seem as if that there's nobody in that room, or you make it difficult for that person to get into that room. And then make sure you if possible, call 911 so that they can at least start getting people responding. So if anyone's ever had to call 911, the very first thing that they're going to 911 dispatcher is going to ask you is the location of your emergency. And once you tell them where you are, then they'll start asking you, okay, what's going on? The reason they do that is because there's something going on, and let's say your phone cuts out, you can only get a few words in. If those few words are at least where you are, then they can start dispatching officers or fire or any emergency response to that location. And if that's all the information we get, then we'll figure everything else out. But if you're telling us, if the only thing you're able to get out is someone's shooting, but we don't know exactly where that is, and you can triangulate, if it's a landline, but if it's just off a cell phone tower, then this is only gives us a general area. That's good information, but the best information is to know where. So the first good thing I'll ask you is what's the location of your emergency, and then okay, what's going on?
Yeah. I know there are a lot of variables there, but if you are in a scary situation, you call 911, you say the location, and then the phone gets cut out or you have to hang up, be silent. What kind of response times should people expect on average, or in,
So there's different priority level calls. So if there's a call that, oh, hey, 4 months ago, my mail got stolen. That's not a level one type 1 priority call. So that kind of everything's triage, right? So once dispatch gets calls, they put them in different tiers. Something like that, an unknown trouble or 911 hang up is a priority 1 call. And the person sounds distress. And once that happens, then we're going to get officers dispatched there immediately. So if anyone's doing any other type of call that's not a priority 1, they're going to be dispatched as quickly as possible. Now, the response time is going to differ depending on where you live and what type of agency. If it's here at UCI, we respond to those priority 1 calls pretty quickly.
Okay. Now there's a little known feature on iPhones. I'm not an expert, but I do know this. if you like squeeze the side buttons, both the power and the volume, I think it automatically dials 911, or it counts down to 3 or something, like if you can't pull up the dial pad or your phone's in your pocket. Do you know about that, Temo? Is that something that's useful?
Right. So there's something like that available with iPhones, and it's also available for Androids.
Okay.
Yeah, there's it's a function that you can turn on with your phone, and then you set it so that once you do, whatever the key is, it'll send your GPS location to 911, and it'll call 911 for you. So
Okay.
yeah, so things like that, or if you have the ability, yeah, turn them on. That's definitely helpful.
Okay. So this is a good time, I think, to revisit the question that we got from Leanne Kaufman. So talking about kids, how do we prepare kids? What, various ages? Obviously, teenagers are going to be more capable than 5-6-year-olds, and they're in different situations. So let's spend a couple questions on that. We're going to want to know how to educate our kids, what to prepare them for, and just generally, if there's a situation, how should they react for basic safety information?
So my wife and I gave our kids words that they know. So the only people that are allowed to pick up our kids are my wife, myself, grandma and grandpa's, and then my brothers, and then her brothers. Anyone that's outside of that, there's a special word. And if somebody comes up to them saying like, "Oh, I'm picking you up for your mom because she's sick or she's in the hospital, come with me." If they don't know that word, they know not to go with them. So again, just understanding that whenever whenever these terrible things happen and kids get kidnapped, or all parents think the same thing. Oh, that's not going to happen here. That happens over there. But just understand that it can happen anywhere. So just having these type of safety measures in place. And so just being able to talk to your kids and letting them know, like, hey, if someone else picks you up, then they have to know this word. And if they don't, then you don't go with them. And you wait, you wait for mom or daddy, you wait for, for whoever it is that person is that's authorized to go pick them up. That you tell them beforehand, hey, it's okay if this person goes because you already personally vetted them, then anyone needs to know that word.
So that's great. Now, if it's not a pickup situation, say you're at the OC fair or at a ball game, and there's there's crowds everywhere, and you get separated from your family. You're not you don't have any word situation because you're not expecting to get picked up, but your kid gets lost. What should you prep them for there?
So we were told in the academy that in that type of situation, the best thing to do, and this is from an Orange County deputy who had worked special victims unit and vice and all that. And his recommendation was the best thing, like let's say a 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 5-year-old gets lost at the mall. Best thing to do statistically is to find another mom and have the kid go to the mom and say, can you help me? I lost my mommy, or I lost my parents. Yeah. And instinctively to all of us, because it was a bunch of recruits, like, well, why don't you just tell them to find the cops? It's like, well, because a lot of times kids can't sort of differentiate the difference between a police officer and a security guard. And he's like, not to rag on security guards, but a lot of security guards are people who want to be cops that can't pass the background. So there's something there. Statistically speaking, their best option is to go and find another mom and to just say, hey, I can't find my parents.
Wow. So that's a fascinating insight into security guards. And then also that validates.
A lot of my friends are good at security guards, some really good people.
Sure.
But just, again, sure. If we're just playing a number here.
Yeah, of course. That validates what my wife, Maggie, also an alum, says: find a mom with a stroller. So, yeah. But you said find a mom, and they teach that in the academy. Is that right?
Well, that's what one of the deputies told us.
Okay.
That works special victims. So yeah. That's what he was saying. Yeah, the statistics, because they're going to be the ones that are going to be more caring, motherly, and help the kid.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So other situations, do they have education in schools these days for disaster preparedness? I believe they do, but are you familiar with that?
They do. To what extent, I'm not sure. I know we put on active shooter trainings here on campus. That's available to anyone at the medical center or anybody, if anyone's an alum that work on campus and they want that type of training, you can find it on our website, and we can always coordinate that. We can do it on a department level, school level, office level, and anything in between. So we do that here. I mean, UCI is really good. We have our CSAR, Campus Search and Rescue. So I know we do it a lot here. I know the campuses or elementaries and middle schools do it, at least we did when I was a kid, but that was a lot more like fire drills and like earthquake drills. I don't know what type of training they do, if any, for active shooters.
Yeah. I'll vouch for that. Our office at the Alumni Association, we had an active shooter training at the Newkirk Alumni Center by UCIPD. It was phenomenal and insightful. Very, very, very highly recommended for all workplaces, I would say. Now, do you have other situations that we should train our kids in? Actually, let me ask you a different question. You touched on harassment. So there are all kinds of things we need to have public safety tips and tricks. Public safety means a lot of things. Harassment, even public health with COVID, that's very much in the news and resources everywhere. But things like harassment, even things that we may not think of, like non-violent situations, but dangerous situations nonetheless. Do you have any insight there?
Yeah. I would always recommend that people try, if possible, to come to a resolution amongst themselves. So if me and you are having, like, let's say this is a workplace environment, me and you are having issues, me and you aren't able to resolve it, then take it to your supervisor. If the supervisor gets involved, but they're still not able to get it taken care of, then just keep moving it up the chain. If it's something that starts becoming criminal, then bring it to the police's attention and let us be the ones that are handling it. There are penal codes out there that specifically say that you're not allowed to harass somebody. You can't send somebody obscene or excessive phone calls or text messages or messaging after you've told them not to. So things like that, you can always get the police involved, and then now we'll go and we'll speak to the person. But understand when something like that's happening, then the anonymity is also not really there as much, because obviously if I'm saying that, oh, Jeff's harassing me, Jeff keeps on sending me these phone calls, then when the police officer comes and speaks to you, it's not going to be like, oh, hey, if there's anybody that you're sending this message to, stop. It's like, okay, well, I know there's only one person. So just understand that, like once we start getting involved, and as best that we can, we try to keep things anonymous when possible, when it comes to just like simple harassment. But yeah, but just don't be afraid to, if you're not able to get the resolution, get it resolved amongst yourselves, always feel free. You should feel comfortable going to your supervisors, but if not, you can always come to the police. Especially if you work on campus, you guys can always come to us.
Yeah, come to you. That's of course. So we have this event, but they can come to you, to I assume other police stations, and get some advice. Now, some other situations that cross my mind, at your own home, on the hiking trail, biking down maybe a dangerous road. Do you have any public safety tips for those situations? And kind of what I'm thinking of is pepper spray, other self-defense tools, and maybe weapons. I know it's personal discussions for what you want to have in the home. Do you have any standard recommendations for that or not?
I would always say that, I mean, we have certain constitutional rights. I'm a very big advocate that people should exercise the rights to whatever extent they feel comfortable. Pepper spray is something that if you're out in public and you feel that that's a safety tool that you would need, then absolutely. I can tell you that every police officer, fireman, and EMT that I know carries a pocket knife with them. And it's for multiple reasons. I know a lot of us have ones that you're able to break a windshield. So in case somebody gets stuck in a car, that we have that available. We have ones that have the availability to cut a seatbelt. And then obviously, you have the blade for self-defense. My dad's an avid hiker. He goes hiking almost every day, but he always goes at like 4 in the morning. Now I tell him, I'll pop like this mountain lion. What are you doing? He's like, oh, it's fine. I'm all, well, do you have a knife or anything, like just to protect yourself? Oh, that's fine. So I went and I got him a knife. I got him a knife. And I don't even know if he takes it, he probably just uses it a scar. But at least I have this a little bit of peace of mind that we had that option in case the mountain lion ever does come try to attack him.
Yeah. Well, I want to open it to the audience because we've talked about a number of scenarios, situations that people may be concerned about, but I'm sure folks in the audience have more ideas. Like, is there a situation either you've been in or you're fearful of that you don't want to get in? What is that situation, and what is your question about that? So throw that in the Q&A. We did just cover briefly harassment, but I want to shout out Tisa Shavers. What's up, Tisa, from our Black alumni chapter, talking about harassment. So that's a big one. Now, as we get some of those questions in, Officer Gomex, maybe we can circle back to your career and UCIPD, working as a police officer. What do you enjoy the most about being an officer for UCIPD?
It's gonna sound really cliche, but I generally do love this community. It's where I met my wife. I went to school here. I got my bachelor's here. I worked here for almost about half of my adult life, most of my adult life now. I love it. I love the different cultures, the different beliefs, the different people, the different ideas, and just seeing the rotation of new people and new ideas coming every 4 years. It's great. And I feel that us personally are in a really unique position where a lot of the people that come here, I mean, they're all really great kids. And I say kids not to be derogatory, but because I'm just so much older than them now. They're all really great kids. A lot of them never really had issues where they've met with had to contact police officers. So if we were conducting a traffic stop or they did something where they weren't supposed to, then being able to be that initial first contact and show them like, hey, not all police officers are, one, like you might see on TV, or two, like you might have had experience with back home. One of the things that really drew me to this career is that I always try to go to every contact the way that I would want a police officer to go and contact my mom. And so I try to bring that with all different contacts that I make. And then some of my favorites are with the students, when they are a lot more hesitant and are a lot more inquisitive. Okay, well, why did you pull me over? Well, why this, why that? Which to me is great, because one, again, you should know your rights and you should absolutely exercise them. So, and just kind of just walking through the process with them and just letting them know that, okay, well, this is the reason, this is what happened, this is what we got caught out to, and this is what we see, this is what's going on. So that's the reason why I'm here. And 9 times out of 10, a lot of the students and staff members are like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. But we also do have the luxury of, we're not a major metropolitan city. We're not going call to call. Once we get a call for service, we have a lot more time that we can dedicate to that call. So we do a lot more of an educational standpoint here, which I think is great, because now those students can now, or those contacts or those people can go to their respective cities or wherever they're going and take that knowledge and know a little bit more about law enforcement, what the law is.
Yeah.
So, long-winded way of me just saying that I really love working here.
Well, no, it's great, and it seems like you help cultivate the great community here at UCI. I'm sure that's the case with other police departments. If anyone does want to follow your career path, what are the opportunities for people looking to become part of the public safety force?
So we mentioned earlier, having a bachelor's degree isn't mandatory, but a lot of Southern California agencies are leaning towards that way. I know us specifically, I want to say close to 70, 80, or maybe 90% of our officers have at least a bachelor's. It's not mandatory for a lot of different agencies, but again, either military experience or a bachelor's. and a lot of agencies are leaning more towards bachelor's. But if you're looking to get into law enforcement, I would recommend going to a community or citizens academy in your local agency, or with the sheriff's academy or the sheriff's department. A lot of agencies have them. I know we have one that we've been doing over Zoom. That's been really popular. Irvine has a good one. Tustin has a really good one. The sheriff's department has a really good community police academy, and just getting to learn a little bit more about it. You can see the different things that go on in a police department, how it's not just officers, but there's CSI, there's a lot of different non-sworn ways that you can get involved. So just join a community police academy and learn a little bit more about it, and then you can see all the different avenues and different things, jobs within a police department, and see which one works for you.
Great. Well, thanks for that. Now we will get into audience questions, and we've got about 10 minutes. So some great questions did come in. We've got a question here. What are some other safety approved weapons, things, defense, whether, pepper spray, stun weapons, electric, whatever it may be, that we are allowed to carry?
You can carry a pocket knife. You can carry pepper spray, and I believe you're able to carry a taser. I would look into those a little bit more, but I'm pretty sure those work. You're actually not allowed to carry nunchucks unless you're going to and from a martial arts class. So definitely don't carry those. And any type of blunt force object, like if you have like a baseball bat or a billy club, you're not allowed to have those unless you're going like to and from like baseball.
Ah, okay, cool. Now, preparing for, worst case, well, maybe not worst case, but a terrible situation if you're being mugged. What would be best to do if you are being attacked? For example, should you stay calm and comply, or draw attention, use your mouth, do whatever you can, depending on the threat?
So again, this is going to be an issue where you have to look at the totality of the circumstances, where you are, how many people are around you, what the person has, where they're located. If it's someone who has a gun in front of you, then no physical object or no material object is worth your life. So just give them whatever it is that they want and they're requesting. If you're out somewhere where it's a lot more private, a lot more public, again, if it's a gun, I would just give them whatever it is that they wanted. If it's a knife, or you don't see any type of weapon, again, it's to whatever level of comfort you have. If it's something that you're willing to fight over, then do so. But again, it's whatever your comfort level is. What works for me might not be the same that would work for someone that's watching. And also, you don't know what that person has, and you don't know how many other people are involved. All you know is who you have that you care about, that's around you, and what type of defense mechanism or weapons that you have at your disposal. So just because if you have a knife to me and you're looking at me, I don't know if the person over to my left is with you, or if someone else is there acting as a spotter. And especially if I have my wife and kids with me, then I'm just going to give you whatever it is that I want, because I don't want them to get hurt.
Yeah.
So again, just understand that always try to do everything as safely as possible. Don't put yourself out there. If they have the upper hand on you, they got you, then it is what it is. And you just give them there's insurance for everything, right? Like, if you want to take my car, go take it. I'm over miles anyway.
Okay, so for those who are serious, or they're looking for more self-defense options, we've talked about what you can carry and whatnot. Earlier you talked about this, but let's refresh. What would you recommend training-wise, courses? How should folks seek self-defense the best way?
I would find some type of martial arts class, or something that you feel interested in, whether it be, again, kickboxing, boxing, taekwondo, kung fu, jiu-jitsu, whatever, and just go take a couple classes. And if you like it, then just stick with it, because because these are all perishable skills, right? And just because you're really, really good at it today doesn't mean that if something happens 5 years from now that you're going to be still as good as you are today if you don't keep training and keep practicing and keep trying. If you're if you're a CCW carrier and if you carry a firearm, same thing. Just because someone's a really good shot today, if they don't keep training and keep going to the range and keep working on their accuracy, doesn't mean that 5-6 years down the line it's still going to be any good. So it's the same thing. Just if you're gonna practice something, just keep practicing it and keep training. If it's something that you can make it a family thing. I know one of our coworkers, him and his whole family do jujitsu, and he has 3 little ones, and you see them all in their little gis, and they go out and they train. But it's something that they get the family involved in.
Cool. Does UCI have any courses like that alumni should look into? Any self-defense courses?
So they did. I know they had one that they would put on at the ARC, and then another one that they would do at the medical center for the people that were over there. And we would actually help out with them because we would do like a quick little presentation of different like scenarios, such as like the run, hide, fight type thing, or different. And then they would do the actual training and showing people like different techniques and different moves. So we didn't do the moves part. We just did the little PowerPoints. They like tell them about like cybersecurity, or how to keep yourself safe online, or what to do in case somebody steals your identity, type thing.
Okay. No, I did just look online. So you mentioned the ARC, UCI Campus Recreation. Tons of things that we can do with Campus Rec. There is a Learn Self-Defense program, a free course. The dates look like in January through February and February through March. Something to check out. And of course, I'm sure there are things in many communities. Now, another great question, totally different situation. If you're encountering out in public a stranger that may have a mental illness or maybe on drugs, perhaps, what would you recommend?
Don't get involved and call the police. Because you don't know what type of issues that people are having. You don't know how they're going to react if you go up to them. You don't know if they have any type of weapons, or if it is drug induced, if they have any type of syringes. Yeah, leave that up to us. And nowadays, it's coming to a point where when we respond, we usually have a mental health professional that's there, someone from the county that specializes in mental health, come out and respond with us. And they usually are the point of contact, and we're just there as cover in case something goes wrong, or in case that person gets violent. But again, you never know how someone's going to respond. And a lot of these really heinous acts of violence are either caused from mental health and drugs. So just call the police, don't get involved.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're at just about the end of the program, but Officer Gomez, are there any final thoughts you have that you would like to leave us on this public safety tips and tricks?
I want to thank you, Jeff. This has been great. I had a lot of fun speaking with you and answering these questions. If anyone has any additional questions, I can leave you my email, and they can feel free to email me. Even if it's something that you're, let's say you don't live on campus, or you don't work here, but it's something else, and it's a question that you have, you aren't quite sure if it's something you should go to the police with, or a question that you have is like, hey, what's the best way to handle it? They're feel free to send me an email, and we can talk it over and just let you know, like, oh, hey, this is what I would recommend, or yeah, go to your local police department and tell them this, or just explain. So if anyone has any questions like that, I can leave you my email.
Yeah, well, thanks for offering that. And bigger picture, we'll wrap up, but we all have to thank you. You're a model alum, and you're giving back to your community on a daily basis and giving back to us today. So I can give a great big thank you on behalf of everyone in the audience who are muted, but some great thoughts here in the chat for you, Temo. And we can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your day for sharing your expertise with the alumni community. So thank you. We appreciate you.
My pleasure.